Hello, everyone.
And welcome to the Specposium, the first of hopefully many.
So I hope we're all comfortable of how to join the Discord chat, and we're all in, and we all know how to mute and unmute ourselves and all that.
Hopefully we're all good with that. So before we start, which the scheduled start of the first presentation is in 10 minutes. Before we start, we'd like to go over a few base ground rules. So first, keep yourselves muted during presentations. If there is time for questions afterwards, feel free to unmute yourselves if you want. There will also be a couple intermissions, 10-minute breaks in between blocks of talks. You can chat freely during those periods, but during presentations, please remain muted. As well as a reminder, the Specposium Code of Conduct is posted in the Rules channel. In short, be a cool person. Don't be a jerk, and everything will go great.
There'll be time for questions. So some talks, if they finish early, there'll be times for questions then. We are all in one big group chat at the minute, so after a presentation, you can go and find someone and ask them in the text channels if you've got any questions about their presentation. For each presenter, we are sort of going to hand the reins over to them so they can unmute themselves and share their screen to show their presentations. And each person has their time allotted to them from the schedule.
If you would like to talk via text during presentations, you can feel free to do so in the Specposium banter channel. We don't have a better name.
I think the banter channel's a good name.
Fair enough.
So I see a few of you have already found the banter channel and are already using it nicely. So
perfect. So in this time, do you think it'd be a good idea to introduce who we are?
Yep, I'm Charlotte Bowman. I'm a paleontologist from the UK. From the schedule you might have seen, I've got a presentation on dragons later on today. I'm very into sort of speculative evolution when it comes to fantasy biology and things like that.
Okay, and I am Henry Thomas. I recently graduated from UC Berkeley with a major in biology. I'm currently looking to study paleontology in grad school. I got interested in speculative evolution through The Future is Wild, and from there it continued on to Alien Planet, the Dougal-Dixon books, etc. Tomorrow I will be doing two presentations, one about the formation of ice ages and how this might relate to speculative projects, and the other one is about my project on Beyond Holocene, which is sort of which is yet another future Earth project. So, hopefully, that all goes well. And so that is us.
Yep. We're going to keep this intermission screen up, and so this is a further sort of 7 minutes for making sure that everybody's on board with the technology and everybody's joined. We'll keep a casual eye on the chats, so if you've got any issues, just flag up either me or Henry, and we'll answer any queries you've got.
We know that a couple people currently here just joined Discord for this event, in which case, welcome! Hopefully the platform isn't too intimidating.
So yeah, hello everyone. Also, with our sort of frequent breaks and our intermission screens and things, if you do overrun a presentation or if there's any technological issues, we have given sort of a breathing space on either side of each block of presentations. So we'll try and get everything starting at the correct start time. But if you run over, it's not going to affect the start time for every single presentation, because we do have intermissions to sort of buffer things.
Although granted, I've been to a conference that ended up running over half an hour off schedule at the end. Hopefully this won't be that bad.
Fun trivia for this conference, we were planning on having some intermission music during the intermissions. Then we thought that might be a faff and it might deafen people if it's too loud. So during these silences, you could contemplate what this would sound like with some intermission music. If you like, you can imagine what the worst or best intermission music would be during these pauses. In the Specposium banter, Ambi has correctly identified the music that we were going to put as the intermission music. I don't know, we could get through like the first quarter of a nice long prog rock song in these silences. So 2 minutes to go. I hope we're all excited. I hope we all have hot drinks and snacks at the ready for the first presentation.
You could put the average like Ramones song in the amount of time we have left.
So yeah, it's going to be a nice, relaxed conference, and I hope everybody has a lovely time. Okie dokes, we're going to move on to our first talk by Emil Krebs. I will stop sharing this screen and there we go.
Okay. Hello! First off, quick introduction. Hello, my name is Emil Krebs, and you probably also know me as Evogames Studios from YouTube, or probably even Mr. Emil Apple. As Mr. Emil Apple from the early 2010s, like that. Currently, I'm working on another project, but I'm here taking show of the one project I made this year, okay? Also, I live in Denmark. Yeah. It's probably a place for that that much. Anyways, here we go. The show you're about to see, called X, is set in the Okavanka Delta, and much like the mammals of our timeline, sometimes...
2 seconds. We've got our first technological problem. So your screen's not sharing yet. So.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. It may take a few seconds to load, so I'll let you know when it has loaded, and I'll quickly troubleshoot if there's any other issues that I can help with.
Oh, My bad. Sorry.
No worries. It'll be something to do with the internet. If you unshare, then share again and see if that fixes it.
Alright, then let's see. Just change the window and there we go. This is right.
There we go. Yep, that's working.
Okay, so should I start with the introduction again, or like my Okay.
Yeah, just do the introduction quickly again, and you're good to go.
Okay. Alright. My name is Emil Krebs, and you probably know me as Evogames Studios from either Twitter or YouTube, or if you've been with me in the early days, like the early 2010s, you probably also know me as Mr. Meat. So I'm actually an animator, and I actually do animations on YouTube and stuff. Like, yeah. Currently I'm working on Crawl Alone Reboot, but what I really want to talk about is a little short film I made this year called Eggs. Yeah. Also, I live in Denmark, and it's a place that isn't much about speculative zoology and stuff, but I did grow up with the future is wild, so there's that. Anyways. The short, Eggs, is set in the Okavango Delta, and much like the mammals of our timeline, some of the dinosaurs in Asia, for example, and such have moved down to Africa. But a few originals did actually make it till the present day. And I think I will talk a bit. Right then. As you can see. Nice. Over to the animals. Leotyrannus. Leotyrannus is the apex predator of the African continent and a member of the Neoarchaeopterygidae. These giant tyrannosaurs took over the giants like T-Rex at the end of the Eocene and became the super predators of the north. And they made it down to Africa and South America. They replaced the giant abelisaurs at the top of the food chain there, but in Africa they have to face down to things like Crocutosaurus rex. Much like hyenas and lions in our timeline, they face down each other pretty rapidly. Also, in addition, these tyrannosaurs actually have spikes and teeth along their tongues like a goose. It's a bit horrifying thing. Next up, Alpacehadro. Oh boy, butchered that, didn't I? Anyways, Alpacehadro. I'm just gonna call it Alpahadro. Alpahadro is one of many African hadrosaurs who spawned from Asian ancestors. Alpahadro is an animal much akin to the wildebeest of our timeline. These giant plant eaters live either alone or in small herds. Water. They use their head crest to make musical sounds as communication. In a herd, they usually run away from predators or a predator, but alone in a pair, they'll likely fight off each other. They'll likely fight off any attackers. Good. Also, these guys were based off a real wildebeest, by the way. There's actually a wildebeest for that sort of thing, but that's all. The grubcock, I have to go call grubcock. The grubcock is a smaller cousin of the giant Crocutosaurus. These small predators hunt alone. They feed on small dinosaurs they can overpower or even kill. Even if they do team up, they'll never attack a prey together. Rather, the grubcock will have one rush into an. Sorry. Rather, the grubcock will have one rush into another animal's area and the other enjoy the spoils of a nest. They do not care for each other, and one may even let the other one die, just to have the eggs for themselves. Much like the bigger cousin, the arms are small and only used for arm waggling. And finally, Crocutosaurus. Now, this guy's not going to show up in the short. He's not going to show up in the short. Crocutosaurus may show up in a future short called Lucy's Homecoming. It is the biggest abelisaur and a real foe to Leotyrannus. Fight between the two super predators do happen, and the Tyrannosaur may even occasionally kill the others in competition and as prey, much like hyenas. And I think I've kind of butchered that ending. And with that, let's go into the short, shall we? Hell yeah. Well. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's still on the last image of the PowerPoint.
Oh. Oh, sorry. I'll just stop the stream here for a moment. Alright, then let's see. Here we go.
Yep, that was showing well.
Alright then, I'll just mute it and then we can
If you try unmuting yourself, it might play sound from your computer as well.
Like this? Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see if we can hear this.
Ah, the sound's still off. As it's on YouTube, could you provide a link to the Specposium banter chat?
I could try. I'll try. Okay, gonna stop stream. And screening.
It's an absolutely fabulous animation, though.
Thanks for knowing that. All right, okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
There we go. That's sound.
That was awesome! Hey, Terry. Terry? Hello?
And we're done.
Fabulous. I think you've got 6 minutes still, so if anybody wants to ask questions, now's the best time to ask it.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Feel free to ask.
Quick question. How long does it take you to make this kind of stuff? Like from the concept to the storyboards, to the models to the storyboards and the final animation, how long did this take?
Well, it kind of depends. It's sort of messy. Like, I usually start with a script and then usually just do the... And then I move over to the designs, so it's a bit reverse. But I'd always do script and designs first, and then over to the modeling stage. And occasionally I do storyboards before all the models are done. Like, there's one example here, but this short. It really was. Yeah. something like that. So this one, the animation, but I do remember the animation taking a week or something, mostly due to rendering. I think like yeah. I should probably keep track on time of these things. I should probably keep it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. What was it? Right. $2 weeks, but not much else. Yeah. So if there's anything else I would like to talk about, is that I honestly like I'm really looking forward to doing the new models too. Like once we do Lucy's homecoming and something. Like yeah. I'm not gonna design for Lucy yet, but I actually thought about Dinosauroids, like very Kia-like things. Also for the next thing. Yeah.
I have a question, and
Yes?
it's regarding your world building. Okay, so dinosaurs obviously survived into present day, basically.
Yeah.
What about other groups, especially
Hmm.
mammals and so on? How do they fare?
What? Like say pterosaurs or was it
Mammals and yeah, pterosaurs too.
mammals. Like, okay, first off, Lucy's not actually just transported there from an alternative timeline, but I feel like mammals are sort of still like, although I can imagine mammals having a few more niches there. And like some smaller ones. I don't know. I kind of want to figure that one out yet for mammals. I did think about having some flying mammals instead of pterosaurs. That could be an interesting idea. Like, I thought those gliding mammals in the Mesozoic, so maybe I could take that to the next step. That could be a fun idea. Yeah, no.
Be nice, yeah.
Who knows? I actually also thought about a crocodilian thing. Like, I go to shit here. Like, see. Oh, this is stupid. Yeah, let's see if we can have a moment to just jump right. Oh, I'm unlucky. Okay, then let's see him. Okay, I'm still on. Okay. Oh, it's a no. What's an otter-like? There's actually okay. I actually thought about an otter-like crocodilian type creature too. Like there was that. Who knows? Anyways, but I think that's it. Like, should we move on?
Yep, thank you very much for the first presentation. You set the conference off with a bang.
Yeah,
Absolutely
sort of.
fabulous.
It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Anyways.
So
There you go.
the next presentation is the new dinosaurs, predictions and changes. So take it away.
Okay, hello everyone. Wait a minute, please. I have to share the screen first. Is it able to see the screen?
Yep.
Yep,
it
the
works?
screen's loaded.
Okay. My name is JunHyeok Jang, usually known as Hypothetical on Twitter. I'm currently geology undergraduate from Jeonnam National University, South Korea. Is there any problems in voices? Sorry. Well, as a paleontologist wannabe, my main interests are Cretaceous paleo-environment and vertebrate fauna of East Asia and paleo art. I'm self-claimed paleo artist, still not sure when I could satisfy my artwork. However, First of all, I would like to appreciate the two organizers who founded this great symposium. I hope this virtual symposium would be a good chance for people sharing information about speculative evolution and their creation. Well, if we're talking about this compared to Japan and Western countries, South Korea is definitely wasteland speculative evolution. Futurist Wild was aired around middle 2000s, and aftermath, the 1980 version was out in 2007, and it's only 8 years since I read Dixon's speculative trilogy in my life. Well, the New Dinosaurs, written by speculative evolution master Duo Dixon. As most of people are aware of, this book is based on the speculation: what if KPG extinction never happened, and what happened to dinosaurs evolved 65 million years later. It was published in 1988, but not only published with English edition, but also published in Japan. Both editions are extremely popular and still famous. Some famous projects such as Stagward was influenced by this book, but unlike this book, these projects are based on updated phylogeny. These are covers up to English edition and Japanese version. Now, could you imagine how could it be different if there's updated phylogeny based on modern dinosaur cladogram? Well, there's the new edition. It was originally published in Japan in 2019, the right one, and released in Korea a month ago, the left one. This edition was targeted for children. The cladogram has revised, but there is no such a changes of illustrations between old one and this new book. And I found descriptions of each animals were somewhat simplified compared to the original book. But before talking about new classifications, we will talk about the similarities between Duo Dixon's creation and later discoveries. Some suggestions from early 20th century suggest Hypsiopodon was arboreal, but it was challenged by later studies. Now we know that they were pretty good runners, but does it really represent that? But due to the absence of Hypsiopodon's arboreal ability, does it really represent that we have no arboreal small ornithischians? People are talking about this. This is the Duo Dixon's creation, the TD, the arboreal ornithischians. But after the creation of the new dinosaurs in 2016, the research that some heterodontosaur fossils from Argentina represent they were capable of doing arboreal behavior. Let's look for another example. Third is arboreal coilosaur able to glide, and we thought it was just the pure creation based on speculation. But surprisingly, in 2015, a new dinosaur named Yi from China showed there were gliding theropods with their membrane. Yeah, it's just a coincidence or tradition. This is some speculations were innovative, although some paleo artists put feathers on dinosaurs since around 1980s. The paradigm wasn't entirely side of feathered dinosaurs. We cannot say this is really some kind of prediction if we take this issue seriously. Here's the North Troll and Coindadromius. They are showing similar pattern of integument, having a scaly tail and entirely feathered body and scaly foot. Well, as I said, we cannot say these are really some kind of prediction. If we take this issue seriously, there are some segments definitely fit new dinosaur discoveries, but not shown in direct way. So eventually, well, it could be just interpreted as a joke, but not really but don't take them really seriously. And finally, this is the main stuff which I really wanted to say. The new cladogram, based on the 2019 book targeted book kit, which was initially published in Japan and later released in Korea 2 years later, based on, as I said, based on new cladogram from 2019 Japanese edition. Well, it shows new progeny done by Dougal Dixon himself, not my creation. Well, speculative biology from, I think it's kind of tabletop games. You can choose to fate some clade, you can make them dominant, or reviving their destiny, but you can just perish them. Well, first, to look at theropods. Well, some dinosaurs such as Bowman and Cotlastus are initially Tyrannosaurs and some meat-eating coilorids, but now they are reclassified into Abaosaur and Moasaur. I think this interpretation is much reasonable. Abaosaurid and Moasaurid are both main theropods from Gondwana. And then people are asking, what happened to Megalosaurus? Well, in this version, the revised version, Megalosaurus genus was changed into the genus Abaosauroides. I think this is a pretty good decision because Megalosaurus is kind of wastebasket taxon. Lots of species were assigned into this genus, but except the type species, all of them are not really valid. Well, some Australian clade descendant from Kakuru-like theropods are present, still showing different appearance of species from other continents. Well, let's take a look at Ornithomimosauria. First of all, people will not really understand what really happened to these dinotheric theropods. Surprisingly, Dougal Dixon made some arboreal theropods or snake-like burrowing theropods into descendant from Garudimimus-like theropod. And some various species of arbosaurs are widespread at the theropod family tree. So the arbosaur clade isn't really valid. Thanks to these changes, this represents various theropods are specialized in arboreal behavior. Due to changes of cladistic position and new discoveries, some clades are not even mentioned, such as Tyrannosaur, Megaraptorans, and Enantiorniths. According to 2019 books, that Megaraptorans and Enantiorniths went extinct, but Tyrannosaurs are still present, but not really mentioned in this book. Now we will look at Ornithischians. Nodosaurs are extinct, according to the new cladogram, which I cited, but Ankylosaurids are present. The Stegosaurs from original book were vanished away. As you know, the Stegosaurs from latest Cretaceous India are pretty controversial. Aside from Tharvioporans, Ornithischians are showing pretty diverse, from small Ornithischians formerly assigned to Hypsilopodons are pretty widespread in many clades. But some Hadrosauroid. First of all, I would like to apologize for my big mistake. Because the clade Abbot Maria should be an addition. No, this is just, it should be, well, sorry for the mistake, I couldn't notice that. I will download the revised edition here as I finish this presentation. Apologize. Let me see. Some Asian ornithopods such as Teddy and Hanuman are, according to Dixon's new classification, these are descendant of Hadrosaur originated from Evogames, like dinosaur, which I can't really understand. Cricket was initially descendant of Lambeosaurine Hadrosaur, but according to the Dixon's new classification, it was changed into the dinosaur originated from soy-crested hadrosaur, such as Sauropus, or the hollow-crested, not a hollow-crested hadrosaur like Parasaurolops. Well, Ceratopsians are still present, such as Monocorn, the only included Ceratopsian from this book. Its appearance looked like Centrosaurin dinosaurs, but they went extinct prior to KPG boundary. Since Centrosaurs are wiped out, and here now the new classification says this species was originated from small ceratopsian dinosaurs like Leptoceratops. Well, I think this is more reasonable opinion. New cladogram says Chasmosaurians are present, but not directly shown in this book. Now, finally, the last part of the cladogram, non-dinosaurian animals. Well, in this book, Hugo Dixon made at least 3 clades of pterosaurs. A clade which is descendant from Pterodactylus-like species, Ornithochirus-like species, and Astarchid-like species. So I conclude that these are Phenocosmotoid, Pteranodontoid, and Astarchoid. These pterosaurs are present, but we know that Phenocosmotoids are vanished away around Old Cretaceous. That's what I feel. This is kind of wrong. Well, according to Hugo Dixon's new classification, mosasaurs are still present, but never mentioned in this book. Well, I think it is good choice that changing pliosaurs into poicotoid plesiosaurs. But personally, and I think many people will agree at my opinion, but the Vogue, the filter-feeding plesiosaur, looks like mosasaur rather than poicotoid. And one of the dinosaurs, which was originally Arbrosaurus in the New Dinosaurs 1988 books, the Scary Glider, was reclassified into lizard. Well, we will talk about the problems. Some groups were wiped out prior to KPG extinction, are still present, such as Xenocosmatoid, which I mentioned earlier. And it is definitely true that Hugo Dixon tried to shoehorn the 1980s dinosaur into modern cladogram. 3 pounds was one of the representative example, the ornithomimate with tooth, with a teeth. We know that the ornithomimate lost teeth during late Cretaceous, and there was no such a teeth species, even in the late Cretaceous. Well, although new cladogram has this kind of problem, but I think it was pretty good to see dinosaurs, Dixon's creations based on modern phylogeny. I think this is pretty significant in itself. At last, I will end the presentation after talking about the manga crowdfunding. It was done by Kamm, the manga artist specialized in drawing wildlife mangas. Keep on the future is wild, and some of wildlife mangas before. It was serialized in Japan from 2007 to 2009, eventually published around the decades ago. Well, there are some people maybe know the initial crowdfunding was eventually failed, which was held around 2 months ago because lack of promotion to non-Japanese people. But it doesn't mean the project is entirely scrapped. just remember this kind of project presents. If the crowdfunding goes well, it might be translated into multiple languages, not only in Japanese. Okay, this is the end of my presentation. I apologize for my stupidity and not so much fluent presentation, but whatever, I appreciate the people who paid attention. It's kind of embarrassing. Thank you. And if there are any questions, feel free to talk at me. But just remember that this is not my creation, so I couldn't reply them really in details. Okay, thank you.
That was really good. Do we have questions?
Okay, go ahead.
We have a question from Schwefel Kamm in the chat. What software did you use?
Wait a minute. So the software which I used was TreeGraph. Well, I used the TreeGraph 2, the phylogenetic tree editor. It's able to make phylogenetic trees without using matrices. Well, was it really helpful?
Sales asking in the chat, it was really cool to get your perspective on speculative biology. Were Dixon's works themselves what got you interested in speculative biology?
Well, it's only 8 years since I was attracted in Dixon's Dinosaurs. But the speculation that what if dinosaurs didn't turn extinct, but then survived for 66 million years ago, I think that subject is pretty interesting in itself. I will reply with chat.
Right. So it is now another 10-minute break. So this is a good time for answering and asking questions from the talks we've had so far. And we'll see you again in 10 minutes with the talk on, I think it's trolls.
Feel free to mingle and banter in the meantime.
Or go off and make a hot drink, because I think it's a good time for a cup of tea or a coffee. Righty ho. I hope we've all had a lovely break, and it's time to start talking about trolls. So I'm really looking forward to this chat because I really like trolls. So take it away.
The Specposium is about to get trolled.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Today, we will talk about a little trolling. So let's talk about trolls. But just not that one. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm Fracus, also known as Lucas Petrin, at Fossil Fracus, anywhere you can find me. I'm an illustrator, game designer, graphic designer, and may or may not have a basement full of trolls. So what is a troll? In Scandinavian folklore, trolls are kind of a wastebasket of monsters, giants, animals, and all sorts of. Oh, is everyone able to hear me? Okay. Very good. Yeah, so as I was saying, trolls are kind of a wastebasket of monsters, animals, creatures that live in mountains, caves, the wilderness, somewhere, someplace. They're usually typically not helpful to people and typically live in small family units or totally alone. So there's really not too much you can say about trolls as a default. The word troll is derived probably from the Proto-Germanic trollen, which is pretty much a similar concept to monsters. And nobody knows past that quite where it came from. So it's a little funky on the origin of trolls. But trolls kind of take shape in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Theodor Kittelsen is probably the father of the modern image of trolls. In a lot of Kittelsen's art, we see either gigantic or human-shaped monsters with flat noses to big noses to everything you would expect from a troll. The work of, and please don't crucify me for butchering this, Schwefel, I believe. The sea troll was one of the first pieces he worked on depicting what could be a gigantic sea giant or sea monster, some form, with a vaguely human shape to it, a mouth full of sharp teeth, and additionally a more abstract representation, stacks of grain in the moonlight. These two pieces are not too well known in regards to trolls because Theodore himself was not really that well known. He didn't live a particularly successful life, really only gaining recognition posthumously. A more well-known troll artist, John Bauer, depicted trolls as very large, humanoid, hairy, big-eared creatures, very similar to giants, defined really only by their large noses and feet and arms. These are very whimsical, very fantastical, sometimes friendly, but usually still monstrous. And trolls from this point on kind of keep showing up and becoming their own thing. They're a media staple. From anything from Warhammer and World of Warcraft to media franchises like Leica's Box Trolls and The Lord of the Rings, though I probably won't be talking about Lord of the Rings trolls that much. Trolls are kind of a monster that showed up almost out of nowhere from Scandinavian and Norwegian areas and lore to become a standard fantasy villain. You see them everywhere. The archetypical troll in that regard, then, is often depicted as being bipedal, having a large or long nose, large ears. They have weird proportions from either huge heads and noses to huge feet, hands. Their bodies typically don't tend to make sense. And they have exposed tusks or teeth usually, fur or hair, and sometimes a long fluffy tail. A troll also is defined mostly by these traits against ogres and orcs, which can appear pretty similar. Ogres being another giant-sized creature that's more human, with an orc being an orc. Green, pig-nosed, kind of the antithesis. And that brings us to one of my absolute favorite depictions of trolls in fantasy, and what I think is a very good ground for an unintentionally speculative fantasy work. The movie Troll Hunter from 2010 was a Norwegian production that had some more basal troll inspiration from the original myths, but made the animals kind of fit in to the modern world as creatures rather than monsters or forces of supernatural power, though while they still are, of course, filled with little weird things. In Troll Hunters, we see that they relatively stick to the archetypical or stereotypical troll of the bipedal, large, long nose, weirdly proportioned, furry creature with tusks or teeth that jut out a bit. But they also play on some of the pop culture buildup, where in light, trolls turn to stone. They hibernate frequently to avoid this. They're social creatures, in part, where many tend to organize themselves, and they can't process vitamin D, which was one of the biggest realizations of the mythology, where trolls will turn to stone when hit by UV radiation or by intense lights, because their body can't deal with it and so calcifies. Of course, there's also weirder things in here, like trolls can smell Christians. They can eat rocks, just any rocks. They like eating granite and slate. It's weird. And they can catch rabies. So trolls in Troll Hunter are at least mammals, much like most depictions. Some of the species that we see in Troll Hunter, and apologies again, are Doverguben, Jotnar, Tusselad, and the Regelfant. We only see 4 types, but they all kind of carry their own different interpretation of what a troll is. And it's really neat to see them branch out in this kind of how they interpret the creatures along their environment, while also making them all fundamentally unique and completely different trolls. The Tusselad, for example, is bipedal. It shares many of the classical characteristics of trolls, but it has 3 heads. And biologically speaking, 3 heads is extremely unlikely, as each head in the movie has what appears to be its own set of jaws and teeth that function. Of course, the lore regarding this is that this animal develops these heads, and may develop more than 2 heads, as a kind of a sexual selection and intimidation adapted trait. It helps their breeding fitness, having additional heads, because assumedly there's this troll is able to survive while expending significantly more resources. And the more heads, the better. It also is quite terrifying. Now, if we were to take the Tusselad and kind of adapt it, I would probably move something along the lines of, to help even ground it even further, by making those heads some kind of protrusion from the shoulders that's not so head-shaped, but maybe having coloration as in eye spots or a certain pattern that mimics a face, even if it's simply a smiley face pattern. But these guys are also forest dwellers, and they live among the trees where their stature and their thinness helps them blend in. I imagine if they were, as predators, to adapt a little bit more realistically, they'd have some kind of patterning or striped pattern to help break up their silhouette. The Ragaphant is the second troll, which is also bipedal, fits a lot of the archetypical troll, significantly less hairy. And the interesting thing about that is it lives under bridges, and what probably is outcroppings in its natural habitat. One thing about trolls is, like it or not, they find a way in, and they get stuck, and they come into contact with people. And I imagine the skinnier, less hairy adaptation to be something along the lines of dealing with a lot of moisture and being able to, or maybe sort of having some kind of blubber if they need to be underwater when things flood or when there is some form of water rise. The Doverguben is the mountain king, which is special in its way that it lives in social troops. They're very hairy. They probably live up in the mountains and caves, and like all trolls, they turn to stone. They're also potentially more intelligent than most other trolls, having a social hierarchy. The Jotnar is too big, incredibly big, and just a giant troll. It has the huge nose, a huge wrinkly face, sparse hair, and it probably generates a lot of heat doing so. These guys live out in basically the frozen wastes, hibernating in mountains or underground, because they still turn to stone if they get hit by sunlight or UV radiation. And you'll notice that's pretty common throughout a lot of depictions of trolls, is they just turn to stone. Now, while a lot of trolls in media would simply hibernate or wake up during the night, it's fatal for animals in the Troll Hunter movie. So we can take this information and all of this previous media representation, even Troll Hunter's more grounded attempt, minus some of the smelling issues and such, and take a look back and try to figure out what might fit within the concept of the troll. I first thought about Astropathirs because they kind of have this goofy, long nose trunk. They've got the tusks sticking out, these interesting ears and such. And partially they do fit the description, but an Astropathir being bipedal is a huge stretch, as they're so adapted to being huge and quadrupedal. It would have to be very basal, and even then, fitting into the environment, there's already a lot of competitors. The same kind of goes with sloths. They can stand on their haunches. They have arms that can manipulate branches and move around on. They've got big noses. They have a lot of the traits of trolls, and while they could, the way that they're built is simply not too cold adapted. There are northern trolls. Sloths. There are northern sloths, but they don't get that big, and even then, they're not constantly bipedal. It's difficult for sloths as well to be full-on predators or omnivorous because, well, they're so adapted for browsing. Calicotheres was kind of an oddball take. That one probably not going anywhere, just off the basis that they didn't last too long, and well, browsing horse relatives who do not do any hunting or probably even eating carrion. Primates was where I get the most inspiration from, because funnily enough, most depictions are primates. Having maybe a huge proboscis monkey would create a really interesting design for a troll. Of course, maybe changing some of the colors and adapting it. It's a troll is usually just a big monkey. And that leads off into one of my original takes on trolls. Taking a very basal monkey and throwing it onto a seed world with some minor editing and adaptations, you get the first guy, the smaller guy, a little cave-dwelling troll that ends up evolving and becoming this disgusting hippo-like creature. Yes, Miguel, you did predict this. These guys have been in the works for a little bit. I'm still developing a lot of the lore and ideas behind the project, but Troll World, or the Trollverse, will be coming with even more creatures. As one of my original concepts, I decided to also come up with this illustration of two trolls interacting, in which I figure that trolls are mostly quadrupeds because of once you get up to the size that they get to, being bipedal is very difficult to support. There's a reason we don't see animals larger than, say, like, or around the size of gorillas walking on hind limbs. And even then, a lot of trolls won't have a reason to be bipedal because they're not grabbing in their kind of environment. A lack of competition wouldn't breed quite so many animals that are just standing on two legs. So most trolls are able to adapt to being quadrupeds. And here's a little zoom in on the face. Being related from primates, they have a lot of very, very weird adaptations with a little bit higher ears, larger ears to help disperse heat. This is a herbivorous troll. It's got smaller eyes faced away, so it can see better coming from behind it. It is not predatory, so it doesn't need to lock onto animals in front of it. We keep the classical large nose, move it up to help not drown, and we also keep tusks, as there's quite a few herbivores who are very good with exterior teeth. Here's some other concepts I've been working on as well for different species, highly derived trolls, from simply monkey to a slug mimic, the predator seen in the last panel, and a sort of floating seal kind of creature. That one's still a work in progress. And that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and you can follow me on Twitter, or I have a website of which I will be posting more in the future. And also, if anybody has a question, I would love to take some questions.
Thank you for trolling us.
You have been trolled.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Two questions. Two things actually to point out. Those are absolutely amazing troll design. Just to first say those are amazing. But I don't know why, but I call the young fledgling owls goblins or trolls because they look kind of weird. Because they're kind of weird and lanky and stuff. Those are really good. Those are excellent as well. But here's a question: are you familiar with the trolls in the Discworld book series?
I am familiar.
Yeah, because those are silly. Because those are basically living rock. Those are basically living rocks.
Oh yes.
You have to take on those.
Let me go back to the. There we go. Yeah. So the trolls in Discworld I think are really interesting because they're like a purely fantasy race, but being silicon based life forms, it's neat how Terry Pratchett decided to make them just living crystalline organisms. I think I don't know so much if the biomechanics would hold up for anything similar, but I think they're really cool. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of really like out there or bad troll designs, but Terry Pratchett's are really good. One troll design I don't like. Oh yes, yes.
One of my favorite aspects of Pratchett's trolls is the fact that every one of them has a geological term name. That's amazing.
Indeed. And like I was saying, a troll design that I'm really not fond of is the Lord of the Rings movie trolls. Mostly because of the nose.
They don't really have one.
No, not really. It's odd.
Yeah.
Any other questions? How am I doing on time?
Just at the end. So
Okay.
perfect.
No, never mind.
Have you, if you have time for one more question,
Absolutely.
have you considered as a inspiration species Dinotheriums, the kind of prehistoric,
I have.
pre-elephantine sort of sloth-like?
I really have. I really wanted to have a Dinotherium be in there, but with I study, or not so much study, but I do a lot of stuff with Proboscideans, and it's very hard to turn elephants and elephant-like animals into trolls because they're so specialized and so big.
That's fair.
Do you have any more troll questions?
If no other questions, I will ask, or I will say, in response to Yoko's comment on they got a Hollow Earth feeling. A lot of the like ecology for the troll planet is in development, but one of the major formations on the planet is a gigantic cave system with like supporting rocks keeping a ceiling up there. It's one of the reasons why trolls are able to adapt to the planet.
All right, so if that's the end of the questions, thank you. That was awesome.
My pleasure.
And up next is my co-presenter Charlotte Bowman with Dragon Evolution in Dracones Mundi. Take it away, Charlotte.
I think the connection's a little bit iffy, so it'll take me a few seconds to share my screen. But I just want to say I absolutely love the troll presentation. Like, those trolls are just very awesome. Might disconnect and reconnect again. It's having a few issues. Uh, 20 seconds. I might have to relocate my laptop. If everyone just has a quick break, keep talking about trolls, and I'll get you some good dragon content in a second. I need to relocate my laptop to somewhere with a bit more internet. Hi everyone. I keep sharing my screen, and it doesn't seem to. It's stuck on the loading screen forever. So trying to think of a few solutions around this. If I still can't go live. And I'm back in the room. There we go. Right.
Welcome back to the room.
Thanks very much. I apologize for the disruption, but it took exactly 10 minutes, which means I'm still in the final break of the day away. But you know, at least I'm not going too over time. Right. Can everyone still hear me? Let's check here. Audio's good? Right. So, here's my talk on dragon evolution. So after trolls, we go straight on to dragons because this is the fantasy hour. So I'll give a quick start on why dragons, which I'll answer now. Dragons are cool. Then I'm going to explain that speculative evolution of dragons is easy as pie because they're already dragons. What actually counts as a dragon, because linguistically everybody has different ideas of what is a dragon and what isn't a dragon. And then we'll go through some features of dragons, and then I'll show you how to flesh out the dragons using science. And after that, I will talk through the dragons in my project Dracones Mundi, and we'll conclude from there. So making dragons is pretty easy. There's already dragons in the world. Lizards are kind of spiky, cool looking, so you could call those dragons if you like. Mammals make quite good dragons. There's dragon legends about dragons drinking milk, which is pretty mammalian, and some art gives them sort of snarling teeth and wrinkled muzzles and things, which is quite mammalian. And then amphibians make good dragons because some amphibians, such as the olm there, are quite dragon looking. Fish again, scaly water serpents. Dinosaurs make good dragons. If you're a dragon nerd, you're likely also a dinosaur nerd. And basically, there's a lot of natural animals in the world which make excellent dragons. But what is a dragon anyway? So for this project, I'm using these 4 animals as sort of baselines for what a dragon can be. So most dragon mythology starts with a magical serpent. So it could be magic because it's larger than a normal snake, or it breathes fire. It might have feathers. It could have wings. And magical serpents tend to be associated with a body of water. Then there's fire drakes, which are sort of Dungeons and Dragons fantasy dragon. The fire-breathing, 4 legs, 2 wings, hoards golden treasure type dragon. And there's the long, which is the East Asian dragon with the furry mane, and it's usually got a mix of fur and scales. It's serpentine, it can fly without using its wings, it's got 4 legs, it usually carries a sacred jewel or pearl. And then there is the wyvern, which it's got a long and convoluted history and mythology, but we're just taking the modern wyvern, essentially the Hollywood version of the fire drake. It's basically a spiky animal. It's fire breathing, but it's got 2 legs, 2 wings. So why these 4 groups, and why linguistically are dragons a bit of a nightmare to get your head around? So in the modern English language, we tend to use the word serpent for magic serpent and dragon for everything else. Yet we denote some lizards, we call them dragons because they look especially dragony to an English person. But it wasn't always this way. Back in the day in Old English, magical serpents and fire drakes were called orms, and that word was used interchangeably. We didn't differentiate between the animals. And in other languages, they do differentiate between the 2 things. So in Japanese, you have doragon for the sort of Western fire drakes and wyverns, whereas the East Asian dragons are called ryu, and they're considered as they may be considered as similar animals, but they use 2 different words for these things. And then in other languages, you've got multiple words for dragons, and they might mean slightly different things. So nagas can also be used for cobras, and ajagar can also be used for Burmese pythons. So it's used for real animals as well as the fantasy animals. So because loads of words for dragon can also be used for different things, universally, I think there will be words that will refer to one or more of these groups, and all of these should count as dragons. So we're getting rid of that Dungeons and Dragons, only certain animals count as dragons and the rest are faking. All of these are valid dragons. So how I choose to build my dragons, as I mentioned earlier, there's lots of different animals to go with. And I chose crocodiles because crocodiles are my favorite animals. So dragon mythology links dragons to water, and crocodiles are semi-aquatic. Dragons often depicted as large and dangerous reptiles. Crocodiles are large and dangerous reptiles. It practically writes itself here. So I've gone for crocodiles because crocodiles are cool. The first problem that some people might notice is the dragons tend to fly and crocodiles tend not to. There have been speculative evolution works in the past talk about dragons, most famously Peter Dickinson's Flight of Dragons, where flight is achieved with ballooning of lighter than air gas. This is good for dragons that don't have wings because they don't need wings to do this. And it's this tends to be hydrogen gas. In the famous ones, it tends to be hydrogen. I have heard helium or methane being used. But in order to lift yourself with that much gas, you need a large gas chamber, and that means a large animal. And basically, when you do the maths, there's a lot of biochemistry and aerodynamics involved, and that's not my cup of tea. To be an animal that lifts yourself with ballooning, you need to eat a lot of food, and to eat a lot of food, you need a very biodiverse ecosystem. And it was just too much work thinking about it. I spent like 3 weeks sitting on that idea and and I still want the dragons without wings to be able to fly because it ties in better to mythology. So the obvious solution, which I'm sure we're all thinking of, is magical cellular respiration. So obviously in this world magic exists, and to use magic you'll have specialized tissues in the body. So dragons have formogenic tissues which produce magic, and this is done using an electron transport chain. So in your cells you have mitochondria with an electron transport chain similar to this, and these proteins pump hydrogen across the gradient, and hydrogen is passively let through this to produce something. And in mitochondria, this tends to be ATP or adenosine triphosphate. That's energy. Well, it's energy stored within the bond. It produces a chemical that's used as energy within the body. In brown adipose tissue in mammals, this is just heat. And in formogenic tissue in dragons, this is magic. So if there is more environmental magic below a dragon's magic field than above it, that produces lift, and that's how dragons fly. And imagine they do it in this sort of lovely wiggly motion that crocodiles already have when they launch themselves out of water. What are dragon wings? So wyverns and fire drakes tend to be portrayed with bat-like wings or fish-like fins. I like the Dickinson's Flight of Dragon path, which uses pseudo wings similar to that of Dracovolons, which is with extended rib bones, and that's how gliding lizards fly. And we don't really need something for powered flight. We can just use gliding membranes. I've gone for a slightly different, rather than ribs, we're using osteoderms. Vitigalsaurus used osteoderms and produces a nice wing that looks like that. And I think that's a good enough wing for my dragons, as they don't need them to fly, as they're flying by magic anyway. The wings tend to be used for display or for sheltering young dragons carried on the back. So in mythology, you might have heard of the Hydra, and it's simply when an adult dragon is carrying the baby dragons on the back, and it looks like extra heads. The baby dragons look quite different from the adults. They tend to be more serpentine, so it's like multiple serpentine heads looking over the shoulder of the adult. This is my use of the rule of cool. I am invoking that rule for this project because there's a lot of mythology that say if a serpent reaches 100 years old, it can grow into a dragon. Or there's things like in Welsh mythology, if an adder drinks milk, it can turn into a guiba rod, into a guiba, sorry. And basically, there's a lot of mythology of snakes turning into dragons, and I thought the easiest way to incorporate that into my story is to just have serpentine offspring, which gradually develop limbs throughout life to become adults. Next thing, not many, I don't know if you've noticed, but when you're out and about, not many animals are breathing fire. And dragons do breathe fire, so working out how they do this is one of the main challenges in dragon biology. So in previous speculative works, you've got phosphorus gas or hydrogen gas, which ignites on contact with the air or with a catalyst in the throat. And this is fantastic. There are biological ways of producing flammable gas. My main problem with this is that there aren't many ways to keep the animal fireproof once it has created that fire. So I'm cheating with the fire a bit by not having them breathe fire. They instead use cytotoxic venom, which does similar things to fire. I have a gore warning. I'll let you know to look away if you're not ready for gory injuries. But cytotoxic venom, if you're bitten by a puff adder, it feels like you're being burnt, and the flesh undergoes necrosis, similar to a burn. And this fits in well with dragon legends of super deadly venomous serpents, or just in general, if a dragon breathes fire on you, this is what happens. It's a quick gore warning. I'd say that looks pretty similar to a burn. So I say 10 out of 10. That's a good way to get dragons to breathe fire. And here's a picture of some snake venom fangs. The spitting cobra has a shorter hole for the venom to come out, and this means it's squirted at higher pressure, and that means that allows the venom to be spat outside the dragon's mouth. And this is how dragons spit fire at a distance. And for some of my dragons, they have bioluminescent venom, which glows orange like fire, and literally got no good reason for this. It just looks really cool. That's the third time I've invoked the rule of cool when designing my dragons. Why do dragons hoard treasure? So dragons sometimes use treasure as armor in speculative work. So here's Smorg or Smaug on his treasure, and the treasure sticks to his belly, and that protects his soft underbelly. That would require them to have evolved a soft underbelly and then needed to compensate for it. I'm not doing that for my dragons. Then for everybody that likes biochemistry, there's eating rocks and metals to help with the fire breath. And as I say, get that biochemistry out of here. We're here for dragons and fun, not for studying chemistry. And then there's the behavioral thing of dragons presenting treasure to lure in a mate. So like bowerbirds do. That was used in dragonology and slightly in Channel 4's The Last Dragon. And I've gone for a very different approach, I think, which is using maternal instinct. So in mythology, dragons are jealous and obsessive over guarding their treasure, whereas in Dracones Mundi, dragons are maternally protected over guarding their treasure. Treasure has this luscious sheen. It either looks like gold or it looks like pearls. But is that realistic? Can you get magical shining eggs? Yes, you can. The tinamou birds are they're a family of birds have evolved glossy, brightly coloured eggs, and this is to do with their mating strategy, where the male will display his nest to the females, and he has multiple females' eggs in there. And the more brightly coloured eggs he's managed to protect, the more likely he is to get another mate. So they've evolved this bright jewel-like colour, and I think dragons during their evolution will have had a similar mating strategy. That's why the dragons of today tend to have gold or pearlescent eggs. Some more details. So crocodiles have integumentary sensory organs, which help them sense water pressure changes and some other things. We're still investigating what ISOs can detect, but basically their faces are covered in sensors, and dragons have lots of these sensors, but they've evolved these sort of wattles to put these sensors on, and they're adapted for detecting magic more so than water changes. And to get the serpent look, they still have osteoderms like crocodiles, but they overlap a bit more like the scale of the snake. There was an archosaur called Van Cleaver that had this type of scalation, and this is just to sort of get that nice serpent look while still giving them strong crocodilian armor. So time to go through the different dragon groups. Basically, I read a lot of mythology. I'm a huge folklore fan, so I had a lot of fun reading all the mythology, and then I sort of grouped the dragons by similar traits and then made families based on that. So the first is Draconidae, and Draconidae is split into the fire drakes and the long. So fire drakes have larger wings like this, and that means they can look after their offspring better, whereas long tend to have a sort of thin, tendrily wing, and only the males have that, whereas both male and female fire drakes have that, which is why fire drakes are more well known for having wings, whereas long tend to be depicted without wings. Then we've got the Testudracidae, which are the turtle dragons. So this is like the Tarrasque or the Cucaferra or the sort of Bixie or Longui, basically turtle dragons, what it says in the tin. Pennaserpinidae, these are the feathered serpents. These aren't actually feathers, they're sort of highly keeled scales like you get on a hairy bush viper, and it helps break out their outline. They tend to have iridescent scales, which further helps them camouflage in their environment. This is a coatl, so it has blue and turquoise and green iridescence. But there's also flaming serpents, which, according to legends, are serpents that look like they're on fire, and that's because they've got the sort of black and orange iridescence to them. We've got Dracotheridae, and these are the dragons from mythology that are half cat, half serpent, or half fox, half serpent, that sort of thing. And they've got the keeled scales in a sort of mane down their head and neck. And these are more terrestrial predators. They don't fly by magic, but they do use their magic to produce heat, and that helps them live in sort of alpine or mountainous climates. Megaviperidae are the wyverns and amphiters, or winged serpents. They've evolved a sort of zygodactyl, backwards pointing finger so that they can grip onto branches better, and they've got far broader wings. They tend to be used for display, but sometimes can be used for gliding and things because they're broader and can take more of the animals, well, it can increase the animal's surface area greatly should the magic fail them. Basiliscosidae, which is a bit of a mouthful, but these are the chicken dragons. They evolved to look like chickens because their natural prey are Faya nagas, which are serpents many times their size, and they sort of lure them in by making themselves bait, and the giant serpent will try and eat a delicious little chicken, and the chicken will retaliate with an insane amount of venom, which is why mythology about basilisks or cockatrices tend to say how incredibly deadly they are, like they can kill you with a glance. And it's because the venom's not designed for people, it's designed for killing a giant serpent. Speaking of giant serpents, we've got the Dracoserpinids, and these are my favorite group. These are the worms and horned serpents and all the really good ones. They've got the ideal body shape for an animal because they're very long with very little legs, and they're just the quintessential magical serpent. And then the Marisopinidae, they've got this really nice streamlined body shape. They've got flipper-like forelimbs, and they've got a long tail, and they move with a aguiliform side-to-side undulating movement. And that's the 8 dragon families. So I do have some cladograms hidden around somewhere, but I've just given you a simple list here, and they can roughly be grouped into 2 groups. We've got the ones that retain all 4 legs into adulthood, and then we've got the animals that only have 2 legs in adulthood, and that's because when they morph from a serpent to an adult, the genes for growing the back legs simply aren't activated, and their locomotion doesn't really need the hind limbs, so that's why they only have 2 legs even into adulthood. and they're further sorted into the winged and wingless, and they've just sorted into smaller groups like that, and after that they're sorted into these 8 families. So I hope this answers all the questions. Why dragons? Dragons are cool. There's already lots of animals which are similar to dragons, and basically I've really like my crocodile dragons. So I'm writing a dragon book called Dracones Mundi. You can follow my progress at draconesmundi.tumblr.com. And I've got around 40 species with lots of subspecies. So I think of all the subspecies were sort of 83 or something subspecies. And I'm mostly making sure there's a huge diversity of dragons so everybody can have their own local dragon. And yeah, I hope you follow along this with this project. Do we have any questions?
Are we allowed to ask in voice chat or just write in
Absolutely,
chat?
yeah.
I was just wondering about why the Marspinidae was anguilliform motion. It felt like with such a large body that an eel-like form of locomotion would be a little bit primitive for it.
I mean, I think I have drawn this one a bit whale-like, but crocodiles already use a sort of anguilliform movement, and it's just sort of, I think if a crocodile evolved into a sort of marine area, pelagic area, it would just continue with the wiggle. The sort of up and down undulations that whales use, it tends to be because they've I think most mammals tend to go for an up and down movement, whereas reptiles tend to go for a side and side movement.
I suppose the forelimbs also let it move around with a little bit more precision, which sort of corroborates the utility of anguilliform locomotion.
Yeah, I think anguilliform's the best way to go because the crocodile's already using that.
That makes sense. I think it would be cool if you maybe made some more species which had larger bodies at the front and then with smaller but large tails still. That might be interesting. Give it a little bit of variety.
Oh yeah. I mean, I haven't fully solidified the Marspinidae. I think this is my first good drawing because I last drew a Marspinid like years ago. So that they're steadily making a comeback. So I'll keep that in mind when getting the designs right. I'm
Cool.
just gonna check in the word chat. So Ambi asks, why are worms so damn cute? Because they're the ideal body shape. Lipton Iced T asks, have you touched on how magic might affect non-dragon animals in the world? Yes, but it tends to be because all fantasy animals are kind of canon in Dracones Mundi. But I deliberately choose not to think too much about the other animals because then I'd be writing this forever. But basically all mythical animals are sort of regular animals that have utilized magic in their evolution. Dracos asks, to what extent do other myths feature in the setting? As I say, I've been trying to do dragons from all over the world, so I've used a lot of world mythology. So if there's a myth of a dragon, I have tried to incorporate it in somewhere. There are times when I've set limitations to myself that don't really need to be set, but things like I've just flat out said no to hoofed dragons. So even though there were hoofed crocodilomorphs back in the day, so they're all based on mythology. I think the only exception is a spiky wyvern, which is sort of based on Hollywood dragons. So that's sort of in the Western United States have that sort of dragon going there. But they're all things. I feel like meteorinkids would be the best analog. Funny you should say that because I do study meteorinkids. That's what I do as a paleontologist. Yes, there are dragons in Arkansas. Arkansas. Oops. I will after this, I'll tag you later and tell you what dragons are in Arkansas. Lipton iced tea, indeed. I do like trolling. Would it be possible for you to share a link to your PowerPoint? No, the PowerPoint is on my computer, and I'm not going to be posting it to YouTube afterwards, but I will be posting some of the images to my blog. So keep an eye on the blog. Indeed, Joshua, you can keep the hoof dragons to yourself. There's some excellent dragons in the chat. Yes, I have considered I sort of based the chunky body shape of that a bit on the sort of snapping turtle. So living in mud is definitely a good thing. Add any dragons that have been individuals being led. So for the individual dragons, I'll tend to make a dragon species based on the description, and then afterwards I've got sort of the biology and then the mythology chapter. For example, of rainbow serpents, I don't have a species named Aedo Wado, but I do have rainbow serpents, and then I'll say there's mythology about one particular rainbow serpent. It was a creator god type thing called Aedo Wado, sort of thing. Scrolling up to make sure I haven't missed any questions from earlier on.
I missed a little bit of the start of this, to be honest. Did you? Are there any humans in this world?
Yes, it's just our world, but slightly more magical.
Oh, fun. Okay.
That gives me an opportunity to talk about the mythology, because obviously humans are there to make the mythology.
Yeah.
No herbivorous dragons, because I made that another rule for myself. So obviously back in the day there were some herbivorous crocodilomorphs, but I'm avoiding herbivorous dragons just as a rule of personal taste. So that's a limit to myself. But yeah, it also means there's oh, sorry, go on. Dragons mythology that yes, there are definitely dragons in mythology which are herbivorous. So there's horned serpents in America, and I'll give you a list later, that were said to eat the more vegetarian options. And then there's the sort of cryptozoology thing where they say there's dinosaurs in the Congo and they tend to be herbivorous. I'm including the dinosaurs in the Congo as dragons because they don't really match up to real animals. And insects or lizard-sized dragons. So my dragons get quite small. I have wondered about making a fairy dragon, but I think the smallest dragon's about a foot long. So no super tiny dragons. They're sort of minimum at a foot and maximum about 20 feet or 30 feet for the big marine ones. No nano dragons, alas. Watch this space. I might decide to throw in a nano dragon right last minute. Have I gone over time? I might need to stop soon.
No, you're good. Since you basically took over the whole intermission. Still have a couple minutes.
Nice. So, herbivorous dragons in mythology, the why you make them carnivorous in your setting, you just decided not to include them because you let us. To be honest, I'm sort of working out the biology as and when I go, and I've left the herbivorous dragons till last to work that out. So sometimes I make them carnivorous and give them other reasons to be associated with the plants. other than consuming them. Maybe there's another, because there's things like cats which are strictly carnivorous that eat plants to sort of throw up and clean out their digestive system, but I don't think crocodiles can throw up in the same way that cats can. But I'm sort of working out other reasons why they'd be associated with the plants.
I do have one more question.
Oh, that's handy to know.
I was wondering, did you think about what types of sounds these dragons make? Because usually they like roar, but in reality, not many animals actually roar. So, yeah, just wondering if you had thought about it.
They can bellow in the same way that alligators can, by vibrating the throat, and some of them have interesting nose or mouth apparatus to make louder, more amplified. The Druk from Bhutan, because Bhutan is known as land of the thunder dragon, it can make a really loud rumbling that sounds akin to thunder. So it has sort of features of the face and throat that help it make an extra loud rumble, but it does tend to be sort of alligator and crocodile rumbling and bellowing noises.
Okay.
If they
Sounds
can
really
make
cool.
if they can make sounds, what level of intelligence or sociality are they at?
Crocodile and alligator sociality, basically. They we're not going to have any civilizations of dragons.
Ah,
Alas.
what a shame.
What a shame. But
All right, I'm going to have to cut you off there because we've hit the hour, so it's time to move on to our next presenter.
Fabulous.
All right, so Kyungwon Lee, the floor is yours.
Just wait a minute. I'm sorry. Please wait a
Okay, so it looks like Kyung-won is gonna take a little more time to get ready. So in the meantime, Schwefel Kamm, would you mind going a little bit early?
Sure, 1 minute. All right. So, Hiei, as I like to pronounce it, is a hypothetical enclosed asteroid ecosystem. And I made this in collaboration with NeoBioHazard, who is presenting Janjira next. And Hoeko, I always pronounce his name wrong. I believe he is in the voice chat right now, so that's pretty fun. I'll wait for everyone to get on. Can everyone see the screen well?
Yep, we can see the screen.
All right, that's good. All right. Some general information. TI 58 or Janjira 4B is an Evo game that's set in the same universe as Janjira, which is being presented next by Neo. Hiei is a little bit of a unique project in the aspect that is both a revival of an old uh, collaborative project, Hiei 72, but it's also kind of like a spin-off to Janjira as well, set in the same universe. And I already told you what it stands for. Basically, it takes place within an asteroid, and there's 4 pockets that are big enough to support a healthy biosphere. The asteroid is pretty large, being around the size of Japan's northernmost main island, Hokkaido, or however you say that. 230 kilometers long, or 143 miles long. Here is the map I made for it. Each pocket, it was seeded with its own unique individual life. Number 1, we have the edge pocket. It's halfway. Okay, so the map changes over time with the project, and the players have to react with the new organisms to the new environments. So it's halfway in the dense stone, which can't be eroded as easily, and halfway in the very erodible stone, which can be. Number 2 is the Great Internal Caverns, the largest of the caves. And it was planned with D life. This was planned with T life. The micro lake is nearly completely submerged in the water. It's seeded by the H. And then the double bubble, which is kind of a funny name. Since it's 2 cavities, there's 2 different seeded life forms. S is a producer, which thrives off of gas exchange, and Y is just a general microbe. The asteroid spins to create artificial gravity that pushes itself towards the outside of the asteroid. It's not unlike those seen in the donut-shaped sci-fi spaceships to produce gravity, though what is shown in the map may be a little bit inaccurate to how it would work in real life, because I kind of just eyed it. Uh, for the Great Internal Cavern, this is the tree of life so far for one of the mini biospheres. So D has evolved into many separate groups, notably these ones being gas exchangers, while these ones sticking to the side of rocks to filter feed, while uh, and a lot of other stuff. A brief history of Hyai. There has been a lot of history with this series, consisting of 2 reboots and various map redesigns. The first iteration of the map project was pretty chaotic. It was made by a younger me, and the project itself was made in collaboration with one of my old friends, Tumix. As you can see, it's a very crude map, and it's very ambiguous and like overly complex. Notably, there's only really one gigantic main cavern, with lots of different sub pockets and like just different pockets in general as well. I used to go by box squared uh, at this time, so that's why you see that. And you can probably see here what looks like clouds or something. This was meant to be like rather ambiguous for some reason, and it was just supernova stardust and other stuff, which is very vague and kind of annoying. It was very overly complex and really realistic, with the water simply pulling downwards. It didn't really see much success in its both reboots, but it was very fun. Uh, then a talented member, RTC Studios, or Riz Crow, he was prominent in early Janjira before, and he remade the map digitally, and it simplified a bit of it, and it was made the main map in the first reboot. As you can see here, this looks a lot better, and it actually showed the first signs of the centrifugal forces that push the gravity outwards. And yeah, even with the first reboot in a new map, Hi 72 was already becoming inactive and died after a few weeks of neglect. Though after a while, I made a prototype of what would be possibly how a new reboot would be done. It greatly simplified the chaotic mess that was the first maps, but it was left for a while again. You can see this in the title card. It still had too many pockets and everything, but it looked a lot nicer. One day, March 7th, whenever NeoBioHazard was making a Tree of Life cladogram for Janjira before, we were talking about like old projects or something, and we basically revived the map in project, and I made the server on the same day. Neo shared the base organisms that uh, he had made previously for possible future Evogames for starters, and I used I used a few of those, and I think they turned out really well. The map in the previous slide was remade digitally, made even simpler. The server was made the same day, and the rest is history. Uh, Let me go back to the current map. It looks a lot better now, and just a lot more simplified. If you're interested in contributing to this project, message me on Discord or type this invite in. I could possibly send it in the banter chat. We also have our own Wikipedia So yeah. Thank you for listening. I'm open to taking any questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How did life formed inside the asteroid?
The asteroid actually isn't where the life originated from. Life was actually put inside the asteroid by something else. That will be revealed later on in the project's history. Uh, it is related directly to Janjira V4. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Erno has posted some funny uh, meme evolutions that he made, such as sus and everything. He also made a troll face for us that looks amazing. He's pretty good at pixel art, so give him some props. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes. What if the asteroid hit a planet?
The asteroid may hit a planet. It's kind of unclear, but I don't intend for that to happen.
Oh,
Oh, hey, I
okay.
made
But
the map for this.
Yeah, there's RTC. Yeah, he made
Hello.
one of the old maps for this.
Yeah, I have
Give
vastly improved since then.
yeah, his art is much better. Give RTC some praise. Thank you, Erno, for the amazing illustration you just made.
I'm doing some like horror stuff at the moment.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. You'll have to send me a DM soon.
Well, it involves Minecraft as well, so I guess.
That's nice.
Shameless plug.
Charlotte and Henry is a pot. Like, am I able to post an invite to the server?
Sure.
All right,
ahead.
let me get an invite. All right, here's an invite to the server, everyone. I'm also going to get the Wikipedia link. Oh no, a lot of new messages. Let's go. All right, I guess that concludes my presentation of HEI.
Awesome. Thank you
So,
very much.
all right. So I guess it's time for Neo.
Well, if you,
Janjira time.
it could be, but first I'd like to check in with Kyung. If are you ready? Because or do you need more time?
Not yet.
Okay, then time for Neo. Time for Janjira.
Okay, test. Is this working?
Yes.
My screen share. Okay. Let's see. Tell me if you can see my presentation right now. Okay. So, this is a short history of
Trollers for
Pixel
life.
Evogame. What?
Sorry for interrupting, but trollers for life, they are the best.
Okay. So this is a short history of Pixel Evogames and Janjira, or Eshopej for short. So Eshopej is just, as it says in the tin, if you're wondering what this drawing is, this is of the comet or asteroid that first seeded life onto Janjira. So a very, very truncated history of pixel Evo games in the first place. It started out from a user called From Aether. Many were hosted on 4chan, then later Reddit. They're named after the simple MS Paint aesthetic they share, usually alien life spec Evo games on alien planets. Janjira started out as one of these. You can still find Janjira, the old Janjira, on Reddit if you search up Janjira project on Reddit. And Janjira seems to be the last pixel Evo game of its type. And also, as an addendum, a pixel or an Evo game in general is a collaborative world-building project where multiple users evolve organisms over time. The most well-known, to my knowledge, is I just forgot the name. Kamm probably knows it. He can post it.
Wallace 2 by Benji Thomas or Sagan 4.
Thank you. So these are the early days. The early days of Evo games tend to be very quick because the sprites are very simple, a lot of initial growth, and you can have a couple users just make a ton of Evo games very fast. It gets difficult to be noticed though, because if you only have like 13 users, it's hard to get your name out there. And because of that, if one user just leaves, the entire game goes on hold for like a couple months. So you gotta kind of keep it on life support. So what I did is I just over time, like every couple weeks, I'd evolve a couple new organisms just so people knew, yes, the game is still alive, but also leave room for people to join in if they wanted to. If you're wondering what this is the first organism that came onto Janjira. This is the R, a simple organism that uses its siphon to puncture into the cytoplasm of other organisms and eat what's inside. 4 months of quiet. Basically 4 months, nothing happened. Then Kamm joined. A lot of players started joining. Evolution started speeding up. Things were good. Okay, so if you were into Ginger at the time, that might have been very funny. The Dinosaurs, no disrespect to the creator of Dinosaurs, but they were at a time where we were still very simple in life, but people were very hyped about the game. I got caught up in the hype, and this happened, the DSDSW, which came from a colonial organism, yes. Wait, one second. Can everybody else see this for me? You okay, turn my record? Oh, okay.
Yeah, most of us can see it, but there will be connection issues depending how many people are in the stream.
Okay. So the DSDSW evolved from pretty simple organisms into a multicellular organism with a blind gut that can digest food. A bit fast. It's a cautionary tale of not getting caught up in the hype. I do my own sins to this. I drew the advanced version of the Dinosaurs, but it's important to know. This only applies for games where this shouldn't happen. But yeah, because of this, we have headaches of not knowing what size things should be, not actually having evolved blood at that point, or advanced reproductive systems. So take things slow, don't speed things up too much. And then the year of silence. 2020, nothing happened, basically. For 8 months, no evolutions happened. I wasn't even evolving anything. And yeah, nothing happened that year. Don't get discouraged, though, because people will come back eventually. Now we have current day, a little bit of slow progress. We have some modern day reforms to the system itself, retcons of organisms that weren't working at the time, and retconning in actual types of blood for the organisms to have in reproductive systems. Yeah. Yeah, progress is slow. It's a bit difficult as well, because the Evo game has been going on for
Apologies for
almost.
leaving.
But yeah, some difficulties running the Evo game has occurred because it's becoming so complex at this point that there's lots of charts you have to keep up. Sight, reproductive systems, what eats what, population, all of that can get a little bit difficult. Even with this cladogram right here, you can see this is even outdated. We have well over 600 evolutions in total over the almost 3 years. But as the first pixel Evo game to go on for more than 3 months, it's the biggest, and we're the first to reach these problems. So, founder effects. Yeah, the game evolves as the game is played by the players. Here's a link to Janjira and some other projects. Upper right corner, or upper left corner is Janjira itself. Just below that is Hei 58. Micrevo, which is easier for some players to get into because it's a much smaller, less intensive project. Just makes a bunch of small Evo games. Evogames Archive, still in progress, but it's to archive all of the Evo games have come throughout history. And then my Twitter and Newgrounds, in case you liked my art. And if we still have time, I'd like to show off some of my favorite recent organisms. One I have to mention that I could not find are the trawlers and the bone trawlers, which are very instrumental to the current evolutionary line. The bone trawlers, their carcasses have filled up the shores, so we kind of had to get over the bone trawlers. They're just giant shells.
I created them. They are my children.
Yes. This is the Rafit grap. They're polystomatic creatures who eat crab-like organisms. Each one of these limbs is a mouth. The ring gorks, which are toroidal organisms, which is an actual clade we have. They use their muscles to eat and shoot up this lattice and eventually bring it to their mouths. The centipomb, basically pseudo-arthropod whale, but their shells are made of collagen instead. And these guys, which are basically just plants, but they have biofluorescent sunscreen baked into their bodies. And yeah, sorry that I went a bit over time. There's a lot to go over.
You're good. In fact, you're good. We can even accommodate a few questions if there are any.
I'm really happy that this is getting more recognition because I was there in the early days, and I'm sorry that I haven't been as active.
Don't worry, that's fine. That's fine. I understand. It's a lot of, especially because of the. I actually want to talk about this. Especially because of the barrier to entry of being both for people who are interested enough in speculative biology and also being interested enough at doing pixel art. It's kind of a high barrier of entry. So, yeah.
Have we got any more questions? Ooh.
I have one.
Okay.
So, were you ever expecting Janjira to get even over 50 players? It has almost 150 now.
Not at all. The fact that Janjira is here blows my mind because I thought Evo games were an entirely niche subject where I'd only get 40 users at best. Wait, also, if you want, I can post this cladogram.
Oh yes, that'd be much appreciated.
Because it's very interesting. Any other questions?
Have bone trawlers adapted since they kind of clogged up the beaches?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Have bone trawlers like adapted since they've clogged up the beaches, or like are they still just vibing?
Some have evolved to become thinner as they come closer to the shore, because we're almost getting to land, and more animals are eating, or more organisms are eating the bones. So, yeah, they've kind of just floating around, either being thin or thicker, depending on where they live.
Nice.
Is there a Janjira timeline from Sandaboa?
Not yet.
Any more questions? All right, well, if there are no more questions, thank you, Neo.
Thank you for hosting this.
Mm-hmm. So now, we're gonna check in on Kyung again. Are you ready now? Okay, so it looks like Kyung would like to move their presentation to tomorrow. So I think we're at all for today. So I think, yeah. Hope you all enjoyed the first day of the Specposium. We will be back tomorrow, starting 2 hours later than we did today.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
Is Specposium a portmanteau? And if so, what's the osium part come from?
That comes from Symposium.
Ah. Okay. Clever.
Quick question. What happens now? Now that the first day of presentations is over.
Well, if Joschua wants to jump in, I don't see why not.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I mean, just to fill up the space, if it would be very spontaneous and yeah, but I could talk a little bit about one of my projects if people want. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to prepare anything.
I'm down for that.
I've got time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I will just share not a specific window, but just my screen, so I can better quickly jump around things. So we have a few options here. I could talk about Nia. I could talk about dragon stuff, or Sylvanus, an alien project. Look in chat what people want to see.
I suppose seeing as we've already done.
Okay. Oh god, everybody says something
dragons,
different.
that might be cool. More dragon stuff. I don't know.
Dragon stuff.
It looks like it's a tie between Sylvanus and dragons.
Okay, one more Sylvanus.
Where's Team Dragonat? There we go.
It's a tie again. Oh no. Okay, I think now it's more Sylvanus. Damn it! I would be more prepared for the other two. But anyway, let's jump in. Do I have here? Where do I have? The Sylvanus stuff is vast and unorganized. Where do I have? Here. Little. This is a view of the planet. Although it is practically a moon. It is a moon of a gas giant, and as you can already see, we have some bioluminescence going on here, and the inhabitants of this moon are largely weird, bizarre pseudo-arthropods and almost all marine creatures that could be related to vertebrates, and they are. I call them vertebrates, but they are in no way related to terrestrial creatures. Where should we start? Maybe having a look at this map over here. So Sylvanus has no continents. Instead, or at least no continents you can see on the surface, because it's an ocean world. similar to Europa, for example. However, it's not a frozen ocean, it's instead all liquid. And on the surface of this world, we have vast forests that form living continental plates, you could say, that are swimming around, being torn apart and forming again thanks to tidal forces coming from their parent planet. Underwater, we have there's their own little word going on here with underwater methane glaciers and here volcanism going on in the plain boundaries and everything. And at night, at certain times of the year, you can see these boundaries between the swimming forests in vivid green and bluish lights thanks to bioluminescent organisms. Where could we start with the organisms? Maybe the first animals that I came up with were the pseudoarthropods. One of the first members and one of the biggest creatures on this planet is Pachytolus. This pseudoarthropod with its long, heavy tail. It's a herbivore that feasts on plants and leaves that fall down from the enormous trees that make up this its biome. Where do I have a good? Oh, here's an older version. These are the Mundidendralis trees. They grow to enormous size, more than 500 meters in height, and have very, very long root systems full of air bladders that keeps them afloat, and very complex reef-like roots in the greater depths to filter out nutrients from the water. I have a newer version of the trees. Where is it? Why can't I? Oh wait, here. There it is. My bad. This is a newer version. Goes a little bit more into detail. Oh, please load in completely. There you go. It's a quite big painting. You see here the crown of these trees is very broad, very, very tall, and on its trunks here, on its numerous trunks, you find actual secondary epiphytic forest, mostly consisting of plants with bluish foliage, while the big Mundidendralis usually have a reddish pigmentation. This varies because there's more than one species, and there's also some variation in height between these forests. There are some equatorial forests which have these very tall, up to 700 meters species in them, but there are also some polar forests with more smaller examples, and sometimes even very flat areas where it's more like giant mats of smaller plants that form plains. Going on to make it smaller again. Bloop. This is a cross-section through the Wool Ocean, basically. The ocean is called Xibalba, and you see here, these are the different layers of the forest of the tree. Here, the outer root forest, for example, where many of the larger terrestrial creatures can be found, and the we have trunk and wood caves. There are special organisms that burrow really big caverns into the living wood of these forests. And but down under all the roots and so on, there's its own world here that goes down up to these methane glaciers and black smoker. The forests are inhabited, as said, by a lot of pseudoarthropods, which come in many different shapes and sizes. Here's some classic examples from the early days of the project. Obvious inspiration here comes from ceratopsians. These are mostly terrestrial herbivores, but some of them are also arboreal, especially the smaller ones back here with their long tails that are able to be used for climbing. Some are extremely extravagant, and this one, for example, is a good example, where you see special display structures that form in males to attract the attention of females. This is an example of a polar herbivore. There's a lot of diversity within pseudoarthropods. This is, for example, a small jumping creature from the forest floor. Here, a relative of it that poops out stinking acid to deter predators. Or these bizarre creatures that live in the shallow water between the trees, where they scoop algae and plankton from the water. It's an inspiration. It's somewhere between a baleen whale and gold washers that would scoop up water from rivers and then shake their pants around to look for gold. These guys do it very similarly, however, with food particles. Because the trees are so enormous, we have arboreal predators that are highly specialized. Here, this Teticurus is gluing itself basically through the underside of big street-sized branches and is ambushing herbivores that crawl below it. There are also some with weird filaments on their back. Parasites are present, like this creature that goes for the blood equivalent of larger pseudoarthropods. They pierce with their little proboscis here in between plate boundaries to suck out the quote-unquote blood. They are also able to glide. You see here the hind limbs are hugely expanded and very flat, and also the tail here has a little parachute folded in. It's the smallest pseudoarthropod we have on the planet. Also, some bizarre relatives of the local vertebrates are present in the shallows, but that's something for another day. Speaking of the vertebrates, most of these creatures are completely blind because they evolved in the complete darkness of the Xigbalba ocean's depths. And these are some examples that do come into the shallows, but they rather communicate and orientate themselves with bioelectric organs that run all throughout their body and especially skin. Larger species are present also in the upper water column, going for phytoplankton especially. These are good examples. These openings here, these are not eyes. These are instead gill openings that so that water goes right through here. A little bit like if there are a few species that have evolved this also biological jet engine. Here's some smaller predators. Here, highly camouflaged species that live on the bigger roots of the trees. And then there's a clade of these guys here, which have evolved a second set of jaws at the tip of their nose. They are basically doing an extreme amount of trolling and use this to their advantage to catch prey. Here's some more smaller species. And here's the probably largest vertebrate species of the planet, Diablo congri, with its extremely elongated and segmented rostrum that acts similar to the neck of some vertebrates. However, there is no way in here to get the food from the tip down here. So it looks like a neck, but it acts more like an arm, with these pseudo jaws here having no way of
swallowing.
Yeah, so of swallowing and yeah, they're just there to kill and rip prey apart. Similar with this one here, which is more going for armored prey with its very robust teeth like protrusions. Some smaller creatures. Pseudoarthropods have a pair of tongues, and this is a clade here that is living in the wood caves of the trees, and is using their tongues more like antennae and small tentacles to grab smaller creatures. Here's some examples of eusocial living creatures. And these are second big clades of terrestrial animals within exoskeletons. Oh God, I forgot the name right now. It's been a while since I worked on these. But they are basically filling the niche of insects on this world. They have next to no segmentation in their body, except for the back here, which is related to their reproductive organs. And it's rather complicated, but we'll get this further. There are some very brightly colored but poisonous creatures. And also here we see very elaborate ways of making yourself seen. Here you see these legs they have. They are unsegmented. They are inspired by the legs of, or the spines of, sea urchins. The wool structure of their body is rather stiff, but they can wiggle around a little. And you can see there is some diversification going on with the legs sometimes. So basically these spine legs have evolved to have different fill different needs. And here you see a pair of lips that is acting similar to a radula in snails. They have little tiny teeth on them, which they can use to grasp food or rasp away the outer parts of plants to get to the juice of the plants. Stuff like that. There are also flying creatures here, like these very more like beetle-like creatures. Oh, I should also mention they have only one eye. All of these, which is in many species kind of squished in a way so that they can still see sideways instead of just forward. So it's more like a photosensitive visor, you might say. This shows a little bit the reproduction of these guys. So many species have this, the males have this spur that they insert into the female counterpart, and then they pump reproductive material into them, and it accumulates back here in this segment, which is then detached by the female, and these claws on the back of this segment bury themselves into any material the female sees fit, and it's basically the kindergarten for the earliest developmental stages of. There are also sessile members of this clade. Here's some more flying ones. Some that grab the underside of branches and lurk there. And some plankton. when you go a little bit closer, you can see this is tiny stuff, just centimeters, sometimes millimeters large. I try to incorporate the wool ecosystem in this project, the wool possible range of sizes and ecological niches. Some more flying creatures inspired by Nyctosaurus, in case you want to know. Oh yeah, and there are some weird things that have developed these clawed testicles, you might say, into weapons. So these species here are using their reproductive organs or reproductive glands to fight each other in battle for the right to mate. And so when you lose, it might mean that you lose your balls in the process. This is Xibalba, one of the biggest members of a clade that lives on the not on the forest floor, on the seabed. They bury themselves largely into the substrate and filter out methane from nearby glaciers. You see here different growth stages.
Can I just briefly ask why would they evolve to use their genitals in combat?
Because they are crazy bastards.
Like surely it would be the most insanely dangerous way to fight, because if it fails, then you would lose your
think, but on the other hand, there are animals on Earth that do similar crazy things where you're like, why are you doing this? For example, why have nearly all vertebrates their jaws and their brain so close together? When you think about it, why not have your brain somewhere more closer to
it means
between your shoulders, for example? You have
it would mean that there would be like a lower
very close together.
delay between inputs from your eyes and your ears and your nose and your mouth, which are going to be around your jaw.
Yes.
And like the sensory organs would be much closer to you. So clearly there's, some sort of like precedent where it says, oh, okay, actually that is more helpful than it is harmful in that situation. I feel like maybe you could justify using Fiscarian runaway. You say something like the females, or I don't know how the sexes work in this, but the female, the organisms with the sex with a higher reproductive burden, let's say, they would somehow be like, oh, okay, well, they're willing to risks their own reproductive success to win this battle, which means that they must have higher fitness, they're more confident, something like that, like potentially.
Yeah, that's basically the idea behind that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm studying life on Earth for so long, and I have seen so many things that make no sense except in the light of sexual selection. Even stuff that is absolutely horrifying. And so I try to let a little bit of that sprinkle in here.
I like it. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Some shallow water South Pole.
Yeah, I've been reading some Bateman, really. It's recently, sorry. It's really interesting stuff. But yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah. In case people have questions, just throw them in. Yes, Miguel.
Would those reproductive organs would they regrow, or when they detach, it's gone for the end of their lives?
At least in the females, they regrow because they reproduce more than once. And in the case of females, they detach them on purpose. With the males, I'm not so sure right now.
Dominic, with the whole penis fencing thing, that's a little bit different because they're hermaphrodites, and it's not like an intraspecific competition for a mate, which I think is what's going on with this version. So it's a little bit that's more of an attempted forced insemination as opposed to specific
I mean, it
competition.
goes a little bit into that direction, but yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. You had more.
I have a
Here's
quick
some-
question though.
Yes.
These I see a lot of amazing paintings that I haven't seen before. Is there somewhere that I could find them, or are these like unreleased things?
A few of these are unreleased, but most of them are on DeviantArt.
Okay, yeah, because I've been looking on there, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I haven't looked well, but it seems like there's a lot that I haven't seen yet. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I have some productive phases in between, very long phases where nothing happens. So it's possible that you just missed some of the more recent.
Okay, then I'll just look at it again.
outbursts. Yeah, like this stuff, for example. This is a clade of very deep living, quote unquote, vertebrates that have evolved their jaws here into completely different structures. Where these are nets, which they use to filter, sticky nets, which they use to filter out plankton from the water column. Oh, here's a creature with nutcracker legs.
I have to ask, do you have like a background in entomology, or is this...
No, not at all.
Like, because it seems like you know a lot more about insect anatomy than I do. I mean, yeah, this is...
I very much
very
I like insects a lot, but I also try to divert quite a bit from what insects do.
I suppose just like the broad, you know,
yeah, the
physiological
overall
template is
similarity
relatively...
it's there.
Yeah,
For my taste, by now it's also too similar. Sometimes, so with some, that's for example why these quote unquote vertebrates here more and more differ from my earlier creations, to the point where you can no longer really see that they started out in a very fish-like manner, like this eel-like creature that swims backward. Back here are the jaws, and
makes
it
sense.
has this sticky veil of skin surrounding its actual body. So when a predator comes in and bites into it, it just rips out part of that instead of going for the actual body.
I mean, I've no idea how you come up with some of these ideas, because like all
It
of
takes
the
a lot of
sort
time and a
early
lot of sketching.
arthropods, cnidarians, sponges, God, they're way beyond me. Vertebrates, love it. As soon as you get into something without a spine, it just becomes so complicated.
Yeah, it takes a while. This is probably the biggest member of this very specific group of vertebrates, and it's completely it's so far removed from stuff like these fish-like creatures
Derived.
that I showed in the beginning. So you see still here the jaws, but part of the inner mouth parts have now become a way to filter out food particles, but also they are partly chemophores. They go for methane and other stuff, and they store microorganisms in these in this apparatus here. So they have basically symbionts, and they are very, very heavily armored. You see here the boundaries between armor plating, which makes them look a little bit like bamboo. And they have here these electric organs at the bottom and top to orient themselves. These are the most recent examples of the vertebrates, and among the pseudoarthropods, I created recently a new clade that has these very bizarre structures on their head, which grow as they age, and these are actually also reproductive organs. You see here these little dots on the ends of these antlers are actually eggs in which the juveniles develop, and when they hatch, they have a big balloon-like structure which they use to float away until they are large enough to no longer be bothered by terrestrial predators, as much as least, and then they sink to the ground and begin their own life. And these, you can see here, these black bands here. These are basically growth rings that form at the base of the eggs. Or rather, these are remnants of the egg base, and so you can count these remnants of the eggshell to know how old, how many reproductive cycles the animal went through. Also, on a more trollish note, here is probably the newest creature that I included, Pelta homunculus, which is a pseudo-arthropod. You can see here the tail curled inwards and everything, but it's walking on 2 legs and has 2 functional arms, and the third pair of limbs is here on the back to carry young around, or sometimes plant material which they feed on. They look like they are constantly smiling, but actually these are just markings on the head shield that they have as for cosmetic reasons. They are dumb as bread, no intelligence whatsoever, and they are basically put in here to creep human explorers out. And they feed mostly on branches, which they saw into pieces with a keel on their thorax here, which they can use like a saw by basically humping the trees. Yeah, and that's basically all major clades of Sylvanus. And there's lots more in the work, but I most of the time lack motivation, or especially time to make anything more happen. Yeah, and if anybody has more questions, there we go.
Thanks very much for the impromptu talk there. That was just very handy, a good...
Ooh, you cut out for me?
It looks like she cut out, but so I guess I'll pick up. Thank you for that impromptu talk. That was a great way to cap off today. And I'm gonna stop recording around here, and I guess